So my social media drug of choice is TikTok. I am on TikTok for hours on end because I have no life. I go to work, I'm a librarian, and I come home and watch Netflix. I still need to finish Wednesday. It's pretty good. You know, I don't have any kids. I'm not married. So TikTok is my best friend. Hello, I'm Dawn. Welcome back. I am a teen librarian and a YA everything reader, buyer, lover. TikTok is a problem. And I realized that once I found the screen time option on the app. And I was like, whew. So I'm going to do what a lot of other YouTubers do, which is replace my TikTok time. Some people usually do like Instagram time, but I'm not on Instagram that much. I do TikTok. So I'm going to replace my TikTok time with reading. And it will not be over the course of a day. It'll probably be 2 or 3 days, and that's okay. That is okay. Because I'm going to choose last week's screen time, which was 9 hours and 45 minutes. That's a work day. That's longer than an 8-hour work day I spent on TikTok. I am going to read, I'm gonna try and get through 2 books. I read kind of slow, so we'll see if I can make it. I'm gonna try and get through 2 books in 9 hours and 45 minutes. And the 2 books that I am going to read are, I do not have the physical book, so I have to pull up the picture. 7 Faceless Saints by M.K. Lobb. Oof, the Kindle Goodreads app is trash. But this is what the book is about. And the only reason why I downloaded it is because of the cover. And I'm usually not a cover person, but it's fantasy, so I was like, okay.
In the city of Ambrosia, saints and their disciples rule with terrifying and unjust power, playing favorites while the unfavored struggle to survive. After her father's murder, somebody's father is always being murdered, at the hands of the Ambrosian army military, Rosanna Lacertosa is willing to do whatever it takes to dismantle the corrupt system. Tap into her powers as a discipline of patience, join the revolution? That's not a word. Join the rebellion and facing the boy who broke her heart. As the youngest captain in the history of the Palazzo Security, Damien Venturi is expected to be ruthless and strong and to serve the saints with unquestioning devotion. But 3 years spent fighting in a never-ending war have left him with deeper scars than he wants to admit, and a fear of confronting the girl he left behind. Now a murderer stalks Ambrosia's citizens. As the body count climbs, the Palazzo is all too happy to look the other way. That is, until a disciple becomes the newest victim. With every lead turning into a dead end, Damien and Roz must team to find the killer, even if it means digging up buried emotions. As they dive into the underbelly of Ambrosia, the pair will discover something far more sinister, far less holy. With darkness closing in and time running out, will they be able to save the city from an evil so powerful that threatens to destroy everything in its path?
And of course they're like, for lovers of Lee Bardugo and Carrie Scalpel. They're 2 totally different authors. I don't know what that means. And the second book I will attempt to read this 9 hours is Promise Boys by Nick Brooks. Let's find out what this book is about, shall we? Because I don't know. It's like, how do you choose your books, Dawn? You don't even know what they're about. Nope. Of course, The Hate You Give meets One of Us is lying.
The Urban Promise Prep School vows to turn boys into men. As students JB, Ramon, and Trey are forced to follow the prestigious program's strict rules, extreme discipline, they've been told, is what it takes to be college-bound to avoid the fate of many men in their neighborhoods. This, the Principal Moore method, supposedly saves lives. But when Moore ends up murdered and the cops come sniffing around, the trio emerges. Who's Moore? Oh, the principal. But when Moore ends up murdered, the cops come sniffing around, the trio emerges as the case's prime suspects. With all 3 remaining their innocence, they must band together to track down the real killer before they are arrested. But is the true culprit hiding among them?
This is YA. That I know. I know that's YA. 7 Faceless Saints come out February 7th, 2023. Promise Boys comes out January 31st, 2023. It is time for the 2023 books, guys. 2022, get that shit out of here. 9 hours and 45 minutes. Let's get started.
You very convincingly lied to me. But I thought I actually second-guessed it.
Update on 7 Faceless Saints. I'm only about 10% into it. We have a society that favors disciples or people with power, and people who don't have power are just pieces of shit that the government really doesn't care about. One thing that I always find hilarious in YA, and this is where you really have to suspend belief when you read YA, it's important, is that the captain, the person that's over the entire security of the palazzo, which I'm assuming this is where the disciples kind of reside, he's 18. We're gonna put an 18-year-old in charge of security. That's that bullshit. It's like, that's not realistic. But you have to suspend belief. Yes, they would do that with an 18-year-old. Okay, sure, whatever. On my way to Target. It's the next day, and I am about 50% into 7 Faceless Saints, and I like it so far, which is a shocker. It is very nicely paced, and it does something that a lot of YA fantasy forgets to do, which is themes. Very simple, teen relatable themes, which in this book so far, it's like questioning your faith. We have one main character, Roz, who, although she is favored, so in this world, if you are favored, you are touched by the gods, and you have certain magic. And so there are 7 gods, but right now there's only 6 like working. I don't know how to say it. Chaos is the god that is like not available right now. And so if you're touched by the gods, you have a certain magic. And Roz got touched by the gods late, and she has the magic of like, she's patience, and so she can infuse magic into steel. And so, you know, it came late in life. She does not want it. And the only thing she's really doing is making weapons for this war that nobody wants. And the unfavored, or the people who do not have power or not touched by the gods, are basically drafted into this 20-year war, and they're dying. And it's like, you're only drafting the people who do not have magic. This is unfair. We are not represented among the council. It's like, no taxation without representation. The favored councils, like, we're not doing that. And so then we have Damien, who is not, he is unfavored, but he's a captain of the guard who's like 18. He's like over the entire like security detail for where the saints live, or not the saints, but the head council live. So each saint has a council member who represents that faction, and they all live at the palazzo, and they're like the highest of the high. And Damien is a security detail for the palazzo and where they live. And he's unfavored, but his father is favored, and he's trying to impress his father. So he has bought into this, you know, God or the saint touches the ones that they love, and they're favored, and I'm not favored. And he's just bought into the whole religion, whereas his ex-girlfriend Roz is like, I'm not trying to hear that. I don't believe it. Even though I'm favored, I don't believe it. This is just a ploy. And so there's that theme. It took me a long time to say that that's a theme. But that's a theme which I think is done really well. I like Roz. She's pissed. She's pissed at the world. She's angry. And then we have Damien, who's just kind of trying to keep together. He suffered some PTSD. He was drafted into the war because he's unfavored. He got to come home because of the high ranking of his father. And he's just trying to keep it together. He's trying to please his father, which is another theme where we have teens who are so desperate to please their parents that they will do anything to just get some sort of, they're looking for some sort of validation. He's just looking for validation from his father. Just everything. It's not going to be a 5. It's just not going to be a 5. A 5-star for me, the writing needs to be beautiful. And this does not have beautiful writing. So this will not be a 5. But it's on par to be like a 4.5. Like, it's pretty good. I'm enjoying it. And let me tell you, a good YA fantasy comes far and few. That's not the saying. What is it? Becomes few and far in between. I don't know if I mixed that up. You know what I'm trying to say. It is hard to find a good YA fantasy. And I think I have found one. It doesn't come out until February, I think, or January 31st. I don't know. But if you get your hands on an ARC, get it. Let's go to Target. to get stuff that I don't need and spend more money than I intend to, because that's what Target does. It's a cold-hearted bastard. Roz. She's a sneaky bastard. I like her a lot. She's a good character. I don't understand why authors would like to have characters be attracted to another character when they're being an asshole. I finished, what was the name of that book? 7 Faceless Saints. It's been a while, guys. It's taken me forever to finish. I finished. I'm on my way to work, so I'm in my car. And I'm going to give it a 4. I know last time, I think my last update, I was like, oh my God, it's going to be a 4.5. At some point in the book, it took a turn for the worst. And I think it was at the point where it kind of started to give me Scooby-Doo vibes. Looking for the murderer and then finding the murderer, it's like, I would have gotten away with it too if it went for you meddling kids. It was kind of that kind of whole... It's good, but it's not 4.5 good. I do recommend it. I think that a lot of people will like it, especially if you are a big fantasy person. I am a big fantasy person. I read mostly fantasy. And I would consider it a pretty good fantasy in that it has themes and an actual plot. What? I liked Roz as a main character. She knew what she wanted. She did not make terrible decisions. There were a couple of decisions, but it made sense for her character. They weren't stupid, just over the top ridiculous decisions. No, she knew what she wanted. She stayed focused and she tried to accomplish her goal. Damien, once again, he was kind of the one who was following the cults, essentially. He's feeding into this saints business and they give us power and you don't have power because the saints don't like you, so you're unfavored. So he's kind of fallen into all of that business, whereas Roz is whatever, and she's touched by the saints essentially, and she's just I'm not buying into that. So she's questioning faith, whereas Damien is no, I totally believe it, I'm all in. And so it's a great juxtaposition between the two of them when they're together and they're having these conversations about faith and everything. The pacing was fantastic. I was never bored. It's only 400 pages, which I think is a pretty good length for a first fantasy novel. Anything less than 400 pages, I don't even bother reading, because it's going to be info dumped, it's going to be rushed, it's going to be paced very poorly. And so if I start a fantasy and it's less than 400 pages, I don't even bother reading it anymore. It's just not worth my time. There are 7 saints, and they are gods to these people. They worship them. They have statues of them. They go to the temples and they, praise them and kiss them and have altars and everything. So they're very important to the world and the story is in. And they do have their own stories, and they tell us the stories of the saints and what happened and why we are here in this never-ending war, and that's great and everything. But the 2 saints that are the most important to the story is Patience and Chaos, which were lovers, which I think is fantastic. Patience and Chaos were lovers. Oh my God, that's great. But we don't really get a lot from them. It's kind of this is Patience. And she told Chaos to stop it, but Chaos was like, hell no, I'm not going to. And then the war started, and now they're gone. Like, it's like, that's it. Like, I felt like the Saints could have played a better role in the story, especially Chaos, because Chaos is the main character, basically. And I wanted more about the Saints. I wanted the Saints to be more into the story and felt connected to the story more. And I probably would have liked it a little bit better. I will be starting Promise Boys. I have 2.5 hours left of my time. It took me 6 hours to read this book. Good Lord, I read slow. I will see you when I start Promise Boys. Okay, off to work. Well, off to get coffee first. Then I go to work. Good evening. Hour 6:30 or something like that. I don't know. I am going to start Promise Boys. I think it's called Promise Boys. The Promised Boys. It's got the word promise and boys in it. Promise Boys. Let's get started with Promise Boys. I can like share my notes in Goodreads, but I don't, because I have all kinds of like misspellings and typos and no comma or any other punctuation. It's a hot mess. Does anybody actually share, like, I spelled I spelled bullies Buuliez. How did that happen? Whatever. And I save it, and that's what I know what it means. But people think I'm a dumbass on here spelling shit wrong, no punctuation. Do you guys share your Kindle notes on Goodreads? Just curious. I do not. Update. I'm about 10% in, and these kids, the boys in this book go to a charter school. It's called Promise or something like that. When they're in the hallway, they can't talk. They have to walk in a straight line on some blue line that's on the floor, and they have to have their hands behind their back. What does that sound like to you? Prison. Not that I've been to prison, because I haven't. I do, however, watch my fair share of prison shows, specifically on Netflix. They have to walk on a designated line, and sometimes they have to put their hands in the front of their pants, their elastic pants, and they have to keep them there when they're out and about walking. So this school is prison. By the first page, the principal is dead. So we're starting off immediately with the death, which I love. Like, let's go. So I've said this in other videos. I am a lover of true crime, so therefore I am an expert. One thing that they are not getting correct, and I don't know if it'll come upon later in the book, but when someone is killed by a gunshot, police will do what is called GSR, gunshot residue. And what they do is they swab your hands to see if you have any residue on your hands, and that will tell them that you have recently fired a gun. So the first thing they would have done to any suspect in a gun-related killing is they would have swabbed their hands, and they would have eliminated them. So there's that. Maybe they just haven't said that yet, but now a teen probably wouldn't know that, because, you know, teenagers probably aren't watching too much true crime. But a professional like me, I notice stuff like that. Also, they're talking to minors. You're not allowed to interrogate a minor without an adult present And one of the minors asked for a lawyer. Once the suspect asks for a lawyer, you have to immediately stop interrogating them, and if you have nothing to hold them on, they can leave. So this is all kind of janky. Now, this could just be because this is a shitty police station. That could be it. But proper procedure is you can't interrogate a minor without the adult there. And once they ask for a lawyer, you gotta stop. This is turning into this is totally wrong procedure and or horrible behavior. Oh my God. Why would you text a conversation about the murder? All you're doing is incriminating yourself. They can go and subpoena your phone records, dum-dums. Don't talk about stuff in text. Oh my God. Last update before I go to bed. I have a theory. I have a prediction, I should say, not theory. I have a prediction. Obviously, I'm not going to say it on here because that would be a spoiler. But if I'm right, then I will be celebrating at the end. But I have a theory. It's just based on formulaic stories like this. It's never the person they're pointing to. And they're pointing to a lot of people, so it's eliminating a lot of people. But there's also something else that the author keeps mentioning in the book, and I think it's going to come up, and it's going to lead to that person. All right. I'm going to bed. Good night. One thing I like about this book, what it's doing, is that it is showcasing 3 different boys and their 3 different personal issues. So we have one boy who's raised by a single mother. She works really long hours, and he's kind of a bigger guy. And so people just automatically think he's like rough and tumble, and they think he's an athlete because he's like 6'3". They think he's a basketball player and he's black. And he's not. He's just a quiet kid who's just trying to get his work done and get the heck out of DC. I think they live in Baltimore. Well, DC is not Baltimore. You know, I mean, that general area. Then we have a boy whose mother was an alcoholic, so he went to live with his uncle, and his uncle is physically abusive. And we even get a POV from his uncle and how he justifies his abuse. It's disgusting. But as someone who's not ever been an abuser, it's kind of interesting to see what's going on in their mind and how they justify beating up a child. Then finally we have a boy who is immigrated from El Salvador with his grandma, his abuelo. I'm sorry, that's grandfather. Abuela. I took Spanish 1. I know this. And she makes, I don't know how to say it, pupusas? And he sells them to make extra money because he wants to become a chef and open up his own restaurant. However, his cousin is in a gang. And so just because his cousin is in a gang, of course, he's got to be a gangbanger too. And he's like, no, yes, I'm related to someone who's in a gang, but that doesn't mean, you know, I share in those activities as well. So he's trying to live with that stigma as well. So we have 3 different boys that have 3 different issues, and I like it. I like the way their home life is being presented in this book. One good thing that came out of the pandemic is ordering your groceries online and then going to pick them up, and somebody comes out and puts it in your trunk for you. Back to the Promise Boys. Get in your lane, sir. I am really enjoying the pacing of this book. I'm about 65-ish% in, and the boys are doing their own investigation because they've all been kicked out of school because they are suspects. And so they're all just kind of at home, like, I gotta clear my name. And so now they have decided to band together to solve the mystery together, which I think is really cool. All right, I finished Promise Boys with 13 minutes left on my time. I will skip reading. I didn't miss anything important. I'm gonna give it a 4. I I figured I would. I was correct. Who the killer was. I got the clue wrong, but I knew who it was. I figured out pretty early on. That didn't like affect my enjoyment of the book or anything. This book really isn't about solving a murder. It's not a murder mystery. It's not about solving the murder. It's about the young men who were wrongfully accused and their circumstances in their home life and how they are trying to overcome that and be good citizens and how they banded together to put away the bad guy or girl. So that's what this book is really about. I think it did a really good job of that. I enjoyed all three main characters and I highly recommend it. I think it's great for teens. Like, this book is a perfect teen book. An adult who reads YA, unless you are a library professional or a book professional, such as myself, who has to recommend books. And so it's perfect for those type of professionals because as a librarian, a YA librarian, I read YA so that when a teen comes up to me and asks me, hey, do you have any good murder mystery books? I can be like, yes, Promise Boys, here you go. And I find enjoyment out of books because then I have found a new book that I can recommend to a teen, a new good book that I can recommend to a teen. But as far as just an average person reading, I don't know if this is for like an adult reading YA. I would probably recommend something different. However, I enjoyed it. I'm glad I read it. I will be buying it. I will be promoting it to my teens. And this is the conclusion of the vlog. This took me a whole week to film because I'm at work all week. And when I come home, I don't really read. I have started playing Animal Crossing, as you saw. I really started playing it for work because we're doing a program and I need to kind of understand what Animal Crossing is in order for my program to be good. So that's why I started playing it. But, you know, when I come home, I'm watching TV. I'm on YouTube. I'm on the Tik Toks. I am not trying to read. I read all day. I listen to books all day. And so when I come home, I'm not trying to read. I read on the weekends. And so I was reading these books on the weekend. That's why it took me a week to do it. Because, I mean, it's 2 books. I don't think that's a long time. I think that's pretty good to read 2 books in a week. I mean, it's like 700 pages. I think that's pretty good. I shouldn't be like getting hard on myself. No, that didn't sound right at all. I shouldn't be hard on myself. Whew. However, I am done with this vlog. Thank you for joining me. Do you see all my books? My books here? I was doing some book recommendations and you can probably see that video in the future. I probably won't upload it before this one. But thank you for joining me for my very first replace my TikTok viewing history with reading. And I read for 9 hours and 32 minutes. And I will catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.